Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the GMS Magazine podcast. If you're listening, vidcast, if you're watching, amazing. You are either way. This is a podcast or a vidcast. I shouldn't have to be repeating that. It's a bit of a pain in the ass, but you know what I mean. Well, all about games, role-playing games and board games, and the people who make them, mostly the people who make them. I am still Paco Garcia.
And this is Chris from Deus Ex Machina.
Woohoo!
Have you seen the NVIDIA broadcast eye tracking software?
No, but I have seen their AI software that generate images with you just painting some images.
I've downloaded that as well. I tried it. I'm going to see whether or not I can get it working probably for our next video to see whether or not, because I can get it working with OBS, but I haven't tried it with Google Meets. Because obviously I've always had the issue of me staring straight instead of staring at the camera. I've tried it and it's shockingly good, but there is a little creepy because it is a situation where you're looking down, but you know you're staring up, so you know those eyes are fake, and it's completely realistic unless you move your hand over your eye, and you'll see this warping effect where your eye is kind of bizarrely warping and then it vanishes. It's a little disturbing. So if I can try to get that working for next time, it'll be
amazing.
Yeah.
I want to see that. So anyway, let's get talking about games, because today we're going to talk very briefly about the OGL, because now we just have seen the error of their
it's working. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. It's working.
Oh my God, that is disturbing. It's terrible.
So yeah, I'm looking at the camera, but I'm not looking at the camera. I'm looking at you down there, but my eyes are looking at the camera.
That's why your eyes sometimes, when you blink, you look like you're about to fall asleep. Yeah, that's like.
But I do that because of my lack of being able to focus on people. So I can stare at you and stare at the camera at the same time. This is perfect.
Yeah.
People are like, your eyes, and if someone says, but your eyes look dead, I go, well, welcome to my world, because that's basically who I am. Anyway, go on. Sorry about that. So there are people wondering. Yeah, yes.
That, by the way, if you're listening to the podcast instead of actually watching the video, you at least go to the YouTube and take a look at this, because this is hilarious. Anyway,
gotta break some immersion, doesn't it? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so OGL, Wizards have seen the error of their ways, and basically they haven't just backtracked on absolutely everything they said they were going to do, but they're also going to retain doing the good thing that they said they were going to do, which is to put all the SRD 5.1 on the Creative Commons, which is incredibly good news. That is really disturbing to see like that.
It's like staring into your soul.
Yes.
It's like that painting of Jesus that just judges you because it's always staring at you, and no matter where you go, the Jesus statue is judging you. You're like, Jesus Christ, don't look at me. Oh. My mother had one of those in the spare bedroom. I would walk by the spare bedroom and there would be Jesus staring at me.
This is hilarious. Sorry. So anyway, yes, Wizards done that, which is very welcome, I think, because quite frankly, I think it's the only thing they could do to some degree repair the damage that they've done to the OGL and their reputation over the last few weeks. So
yes, absolutely. I made this comment with people saying I was surprised every single time I made a post going, well, we're not going to get an update for a couple days or a couple weeks. And I said, people, we're not going to see something now until mid-February. And then to get the announcement on Friday, you're just never going to get over it, can you?
Because the other thing is that you blink.
It looks like a horror movie when I do this. It looks like that horror movie about the guy who had the hands in his fingers or something.
The thing is that it also blinks very slowly. And you look like you're on drugs. You wait until you watch the video. You're gonna love it.
What would be great though is if I took a nap and I could leave it open, and I'd be like, "Yep, I know exactly what you're saying."
Zoom meetings will never be the same again.
So, yeah, this is very, very big, and I was expecting this news to to not happen for a while. I thought that they would eventually concede some things, but to have them swing 180 degrees and dump the whole of 5.1 into Creative Commons, now this is actually more than we ever had before. And there's a very good reason. If someone decides to employ Creative Commons and not go OGL, that means for the first time in decades, a publication like mine can actually say, this is an unauthorized derivative work for Dungeons and Dragons, or this is a derivative Dungeons and Dragons supplement, or an unauthorized Dungeons and Dragons supplement. We can say the words D&D. If you adhere to the OGL, you couldn't say D&D, which is the reason why we had this alternative, say this game is compatible with the 5th edition of the world's most popular board game. It became a very common statement, so people knew it was 5e. But now we can actually say, this is compatible with D&D, this is an unauthorized or derivative work. And we can say that now. And people go, well, how can you say D&D? It's trademark. I go, no, that's part of fair use. It's the reason why. And someone made a great explanation on a video. If you go to buy windshield wipers or windscreen wipers for your car, you look on the back, it lists the cars and the models you're compatible with. They have to be able to say the cars. So they have to be able to say Nissan Altima, Ford Probe, Lancer Evolution. So they're allowed to say that for that purpose. And that's why you can say, I have an Apple computer without Apple suing you. Now, that being said, there's a difference between, like, if you're making a movie and you want to put your car in there, it's actually, it's good to get their permission, because a lot of times they'll say, hey, we'll pay you to put our car in there in the movie. And then you'll see at the credits, these special thanks to these companies. And it's more about the fact that they let us do it, but sometimes they paid us to do it. So D&D doing that is very, very big. Having the 5.1 added to OGL is very, very, added to the SRD is very, very big. And it's something that I'm very excited about, but I'm a little bothered that we had to go through the whole month. And now D&D, although they've turned around to do this big thing, the damage has been done. There's been a lot of people in the industry that are walking away. Paizo and Cobalt are still moving forward with their reflective projects. They're still moving forward with Orc and Black Flag. We are still going to see a division in the industry, and now Wizards has to now claw that back. Can they? The answer is yes. They did it before with 4th edition. They can do it again. 4th edition was 2 years of bad press. This was 1 month of bad press. The damage was greater, but it's still something they can crawl back to. My problem was, before I was mentioning these threats of boycotts, which I really had issues with. The fact that they were trying to boycott not only Wizards of the Coast, but anybody that published. If you did something that put a dime in Wizards' hands, you got boycotted. So that means the thousands of third-party publishers, small indie publishers that did work for DM's Guild, they're small tier already. They don't need to be punished for this mistake. But according to some people, that is a hard line, that they were so extreme, they would burn the entire third-party industry just so they could make WOTC hurt a little bit. And that's extreme. Like, that's a type of scorched earth, which is extremely dangerous rhetoric.
That is that is bullying. That is not boycotting. That is bullying.
I'm 100% in agreement. And thankfully, a lot of these voices got silent, but there are still a few people left that refuse. Now, thankfully, they are so unpopular that when these posts go up, they are shouted down with people saying, hey, you won. And I actually said this in a post. So some guy was saying the war isn't over. WOTC has to, heads have to roll. Jobs have to be, we have to see people's jobs getting killed. And I said to him, and this was liked more than his comment, I said, dude, take the win. We've gotten more than we ever have. We fought against a big corporation and we won. Pushing now is just going to be more destructive. You're going to create a situation saying, well, since nothing good came out of it, why should we bother acquiescing in the future? If you create a situation like this, we can create a positive working relationship with them.
You know, I find something really amazing. I'm going to presume that most of this, if not all of these comments, come from US people.
Oh, guaranteed.
Okay, so I find it something very, very interesting. If you look at pretty much any kind of produced media in the US, series, movies, one thing that is recurring and repeating time and time and time and time and time and time again is that of redemption. The people,
Yeah.
the baddie who makes a mistake and decides that they no longer want to be a baddie, and then they become a goodie. And that's perfectly acceptable. Something like this happens, and the idea that some people made a mistake because they didn't know what they were doing. They came from a completely different industry. They thought they could bring their practices, and they have found a complete massive brick wall that hasn't only stopped them, but also has thrown a few bricks onto their heads to help them wake up. Why don't we give these people the chance of actually redeeming themselves and say, okay, let's find out what we have learned? No, we have to heads have to roll. You know what? Screw that rhetoric. Don't get me wrong. I think personally that WOTC should go back to Ray Winninger and say to him, please forgive us. Whatever it is we've done, we are on our knees now. Come back. We need you. Ray was doing amazingly well, and he is universally loved by pretty much everyone I know in the industry who either knows him or has worked with him. That's what should happen. I don't think there's anyone else should lose their jobs unless they prove they haven't learned anything. In that case, yes. But for a nation that constantly feeds in their media the notion of redemption, people are really keen to become the Romans asking for blood from the gladiator arena. And it is incredibly disappointing and disheartening.
It's a weird cognitive dissonance, and you speak
Yeah.
to it because you've spoken about it at length, and one of the reasons why I respect you so much is because you speak of that. And it's a weird irony that American storytelling is ripe with stories of redemption, but we seem to not allow it in real life. And there's no greater example. My wife and I, we kind of stay up at night sometimes. We'll be in bed watching TikTok videos, and one of the most popular things that pop up in TikTok are these recreation of Reddit stories. And the single most popular Reddit story that they'll post is infidelity, specifically in heterosexual relationships with female infidelity when the woman cheats. To the point that there's this running dialogue across about men that are giving up on the idea of marriage because they believe now all women cheat. And I go, no, look at the statistics. They are data mining these stories because they trend, because they cause reactions.
Mm.
If you looked at the actual odds, guess what? Men cheat more than women, and it's a pretty low margin. And the other thing that was crazy when I started doing research on this, because it was a conversation my wife and I had, not about the whole thing about each of us having, but we actually had a very mature conversation about how it affects us. And I looked at it and said, 50% of people in relationships where there's infidelity actually forgive their partners, but you wouldn't know that from these Reddit stories, and you wouldn't know that from reading all the comments, which are unanimously, you never forgive that person, you get a divorce and you move on, you dump that person, and that's the rhetoric. And so the idea of redemption has always been, I think, very important. I think people do get that chance. I mean, there are some of the greatest people in Hollywood, for example. There are actors in Hollywood that you look at Danny Trejo, older Charles S. Dutton, two of the greatest actors of their generation, and both of these guys had served considerable amounts of time. Charles S. Dutton killed a man, right? And and he was one of the greatest actors of his generation. I still have incredible respect for Charles S. Dutton. People don't know Charles S. Dutton as he's the character of Dylan in Alien 3 and a variety of other things, but that's one of his biggest roles. And of course, Danny Trejo, famous for having a very sordid history that he crawled out of actually relatively late in life. And you see him now, and he's as someone who's met him, I can tell you he's a freaking angel in comparison to
Robert Downey Jr. also.
One of the greatest redemption stories. People absolutely love him, but they forget where he came from. But people love redemption stories, but for some reason in the cancel culture, redemption is not part of it.
Ooh, well, so I wouldn't. It is true. The things I don't like the idea, this name cancel culture, because I don't believe that cancel culture is either something new or something that we should be attributing to this. I don't think anybody was. I don't think anybody. No, people are trying to definitely cancel Wizards of the Coast. But I think in this particular case, people were trying to cancel Wizards of the Coast. I think they were trying to cancel their efforts, and that was a completely different thing. And also, To be
I think there's
honest.
both. I think these people. I said right now this community. Well, back then the community was united. You had people that wanted to cancel this push, and people who wanted to cancel Wizards. And I was saying, and a lot of my videos, a lot of people these are united. But I predicted, and I said, and I was right. The fact that the moment if Wizard acquiesced, you would see more and more of these people splitting off until all you had left were these people who were in believed that this was unforgivable and they'll never go back.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, I actually support this term of cancel culture, although it's becoming derogative by this point, because I think it's making people take consequences for their actions. But I also believe that people should be able to claw back. And the funny thing is that this redemption does exist within this system. The issue is it's not newsworthy, so we don't really hear about
it.
A good example. Sorry, go ahead.
So let me just make a punctualization. I do believe that cancel culture does exist. Don't get me wrong, but it is not what we have witnessed. What we have witnessed, I like to call consequence culture, because this is what happens when you do something. There are some consequences. Cancel culture works and exists because I belong to a minority that's been cancelled for generations and centuries. You know,
before the term even came in.
We were cancelled. We were erased. You know, Black people have been cancelled and have been erased from history throughout all over the place. That is cancel culture.
In many ways, the modern cancel culture is the democratization of the idea of forcing people to accept consequences. So it's not in the power of any one group.
Exactly. It is enforcing a consequence. And that's why I prefer to call it, consequence culture.
That's a good term. I wish they would be more embraced.
Because cancel culture, it does exist, but it doesn't mean what people think it means.
So to go back to what we're going on topic up here about the Wizards of the Coast thing, now there's talk about what's going to happen. Unfortunately, Wizards has not spoken. I have a guess, which I'm sure will be completely rebuked by Friday, because at this rate things happen so quickly. My belief is that there still will be a 1.2 or revised OGL in reference to 1D&D. A lot of people have said that even though currently 1D&D is 100% compatible with 5e, it just changes how the characters are built. And there are certain power things that are a little different. So some 5e characters are a bit more powerful early on, and they're a bit more powerful later. So it's a bit more of an evening of the bell curve, but it's still not incompatible to 5e. And they're saying that now they are more encouraged to make 1D&D incompatible. And even though they're not going to call it 6e, it's going to be officially 6e. Now, Wizards of the Coast has still not said this. They still say their stance is that 1D&D will still be backwards compatible. So right now we're just having pundits and people who are analyzing us that are calling them out and saying this is not true. And point is that there's no evidence that they're going to go back. I can see why they would, because it allows them to create a new direction and have a system that's incompatible to this 5e, which they've put into the system. But if they want to move forward, there's a couple things they could do. And I said at this point, because they dumped all of 5.1 into Creative Commons, the only way people would go on to 1.2 is if A, 1D was so incompatible with 5e that if you wanted to write for it, you would have to fall in line with their system. But that would be very difficult because all the terminology was dumped into 5e. You could still take, unless they completely redefine everything, you could still make a product that's 6e compatible because you don't have to follow their rules because they've dumped everything into 5.1 into the Creative Commons. So since they can't now detach the 6 rules, unless it's such a completely new system where they've redefined everything, which they're never going to do. That's be the stupidest thing they could possibly do. So what they can do now is they have to go full carrot. They can't offer stick. And I said in my response, I said in my various videos, even before this came down, if they want carrot, there are 3 things they want to do. 1, let us sell books on D&D Beyond. 2, let us have a fantastic D&D compatibility plaque like you did with 4th edition. This ampersand creative badge is not good enough. 3, let us have our homebrew third-party content on your virtual tabletop when it goes live. If they come out, this is our new 1.2 OGL, these are the restrictions, but hey, look at these carrots. That would be a justification for me to publish some content for 1.2 because of that massive appeal. I said that at the beginning. And that's when people were calling for my boycott, because I said I would publish stuff for 1.2. I said it back then, and now I can look at it and go, I'm still thinking that I might too, now more than ever. If those three conditions are met, if they allow us to sell under D&D Beyond, that would be enough on its own. 10 million people.
I was going to say yes to that. Absolutely yes to that. And the thing is, there is something else that they could do to make people want to move on to that, which mixes very well with what you are describing, because it would also allow them to curate the content. As in, we will allow you to do that, and we will sell your content as long as it fits with our guidelines in terms of quality or whatever it is that we want to measure with. And it is if they also opened all the worlds for people to write in. So, for instance, right now with the current 5e, you can only write in Forgotten Realms.
Yeah, under DM's Guild, yeah.
Correct. You wouldn't be able to write for Dragonlance or for Dark Sun or for Ravenloft or anything at all in an official manner. If they change that, but you have to conform with 1.2, that gives people an option. That gives people a choice. Because if when they release Planescape, which I don't think they will be able to do on the 1.2 at this stage, I think it's a bit, or at least, it's unlikely, but who knows? But if they release Planescape on the 1.2, for instance, and they say, you will be able to write things for 1.4 for Planescape as long as you abide by these 1.2, and these are the conditions. I think that, unless, of course, the conditions were completely stupid, like in the leaked OGL document, that would help some people say, okay, I do want to write for this. Because I know of a lot of people who would love to write for things like Dark Sun, Dragonlance, Ravenloft, Planescape, and, well, any other world they have already released. So if they do that, I think that could be something very, very interesting to witness.
Yeah, and if they create a situation where it's like, if you do create that content, you can sell it for D&D Beyond, and then we would want exclusivity. That means they can take a cut of every those sales. It could be the 30%. Let's hope it's a 30% that drive through RPG, and they're not trying to do a 50-50 thing. They could very well. I wouldn't bother. I mean, I'm a person that would not write for those settings. I create my own, but adapting Ultramar. If they came out with that OGL and said, by this date you can start selling your products, I would race to adapt Ultramodern 5 to 1.2. I would make it as fast as possible to make sure that's one of the first products. I don't know if I do it for Amethyst or the others, but Ultramodern 5, which doesn't have a setting and just has mechanics, oh yeah, I'd be all over that.
I think it would be a very interesting. I know, as I said, I know people who would. I would love to write, for Dark Sun and Planescape, because they are my favorite settings, and they are the settings that actually bring me some sort of inspiration. So from that point of view, I think that could perhaps work. So we'll see what they come up with. I think the interesting times that we have witnessed over the last few weeks are not over yet by any stretch of the imagination, because I'm also looking forward to finding out what happens with all of the people who decided, oh, I'm moving now to Pathfinder 2. I don't want to be on this anymore. And I'm thinking now, damn, how do I come back without looking like a douchebag? How do I do this?
Yeah. So yeah, suffice to say, I lost a few subscribers on my YouTube channel, but then I got a whole bunch back over the last few days, and I'm still working on my my kind of think project, my think tank of 5.75, just because it's fun. I'm not doing one this week just because I have so much to do, but I will be doing one probably next week. And it's a fun process. I enjoy doing it, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. But yeah, I'm really, really hoping we go back, and I'm hoping D&D manages to claw back its market share. There was a comment, people are always saying, right through those other systems, right through those other systems. And I have said that they don't have the market share, and that I asked a question on my group page. Hey guys, who out here is playing Pathfinder Second Edition?
Yeah, or Pathfinder Second Edition.
Specifically Pathfinder Second Edition, because that's the one everyone is bringing up. Almost everyone I talk to brings up Pathfinder Second Edition, and then Paizo had their announcement where they sold 8 times their regular stock, and they've almost completely sold out of their Pathfinder stuff. So I'm glad. Yes, exactly. And I asked how many people are playing it, and 1 person out of 15 said they were. And I then made a post on every single non-5e, so 13th Age, Savage World, Fate, Pathfinder, the whole works, saying, hey guys, obviously, here are the games I make that are compatible with your system. I put a link to it. And I went to check. And over the subsequent 3 weeks, I sold nothing. I still sold a lot of 5e stuff. Somebody cleared out my whole I bought one of almost everything I had, all in 5e. People are still not buying. And I think the reason why is that when people look at those systems, unlike 5e, which they've embraced the third-party market, I don't think people are embracing the third party. So even though Pathfinder sells very, very well, I don't think that there's a huge market in the third-party field for that. So it's unfortunate that despite what everyone says, I still don't think this shift to these other systems has occurred as great as people claim it is. A lot of people may be buying Paizo's books, but at the end of the day, I think a lot of them are going to go back to 5e. And somebody said a comment going, the problem is when you get 5 people together and you ask them what games they play, if you get a large enough group, 5e will eventually be one of the only common denominators. So that's when people are going to play. And I always reminded a review I did. There's a restaurant in hometown called Boston Pizza. And in Boston Pizza, it's not a great restaurant, but everyone knows it. And the menu is so big that people always have something there that they can eat. So when you don't know what you want to, like you have 5 people together, where do you want to go? And no one can decide, you go to Boston Pizza. And that's kind of D&D is the Boston Pizza. Like it's this common thing that everyone can do.
And I'm going to say something that may prove unpopular for some people, but I bet you anything that is true.
No, really?
It is true. I bet you anything. I have been a D&D supporter since ever, because it is something that I am very public about. D&D saved my life when I was a young teenager, so I have a debt to the game. That means I am going to support it regardless. However, what I don't do is to support the company in the best way that I can, which is I don't talk about the product if they do something that I don't agree with or that I don't like. And I am very vocal and very open about criticizing it when they mess it up, which they do, as much as I am to compliment them when they get it right, which is also very often. So I bet you anything, there is an awful lot of people that what they've done is exactly that, to just shut up. They have stopped talking about D&D, they have stopped talking about what they have bought or what they are looking forward to having. They have started crying, and calling for playing other games, but in reality, deep in their little hearts, they still love D&D because they feel that loving something that comes from a company that's behaving so appallingly is bad. And humans, news for you, it isn't. It is absolutely okay to completely and utterly love D&D, regardless and despite what Wizards of the Coast has done, because D&D is way bigger than Wizards of the Coast. Wizards of the Coast, Hasbro, could disappear completely tomorrow morning for anything, just a wish granted by a genie, and D&D would survive no matter what, because it's a lot bigger. So yes, you can definitely, and I will repeat what we have said so many times in the past previous episodes, support third party who publish for 5e if you want to truly boycott these people, because that is sending them the message that you want to, but your money's going elsewhere, and those people are actually making a profit indirectly thanks to WOTC, whilst they're saying absolutely no pennies from you. But if you want to love something, just do it the best possible way, and that's it. But I don't think there's anything bad or filthy about loving Dungeons and Dragons, even with all that's been going on with Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah, well, you hit the nail on the head. I've said almost exactly those words verbatim several times on both videos and posts. So I'm 100% agreeing, because I have literally said exactly the same thing. I said my exact quote was 1,000 years in the future, where the world has become a post-apocalyptic hellscape, and all corporations are gone. No one remembers any of them. some mutant will uncover a player's handbook, go to his other mutants and go, "Hey, this world sucks. Let's pretend to be elves for an evening."
So anyway, that's OGL for now. I think we will probably talk about this more next week, because I beg you anything by next week, something else will have happened, and then we'll wait and see. I have to say also massive congratulations to Paizo for their sales. I really sincerely hope they continue. Seriously, I would love to see Paizo doubling, trebling in size, together with Monte Cook and No Diffuse and Cubicle 7 and Free League and any Pelgrane Press and anyone else who's ever published anything that's remotely compatible with 5e. I really hope they continue thriving and growing. So yeah, massive congratulations to them, and long may it continue. So let's move to the next segment, which I don't know what it is, because you said you had something you wanted to talk about.
Well, time for news. Time for news. Okay, so first thing, have you heard of the company called Into the Box? Into the Box Games. Have you heard of them?
It rings a bell, but let's pretend I do not, because I wouldn't be able to tell you anything about them. So no.
Into the Box are, in my opinion, they're noteworthy for having one of the very, very first hugely